event this is. Let's give him and his staff and the people who are serving us food a round of applause. And I also want to offer gratitude for each of you. You know, it's been many years since I was in high school and in need of any sort of guidance regarding academics, but I recall just how important that was, and certainly at a very fragile time in my life. So I know the importance of what you do. I don't know every aspect of what you do on a daily basis, but I know it's critical. I also know, as primarily women, I know we have a few men in the room, you tend to do a lot for everyone. And I suspect your needs and your priorities are often on the back burner. So I commend you for taking time today for yourself. I know this is in the service of others, but the fact that you stepped away from what you ordinarily do and you invest this time in you, I think is really commendable. And I'm really glad you're here. And I'm, as I said, so honored to be part of the experience for you. And I hope you'll learn something from me. And I do welcome your feedback. So I suspect many of you did something different during the pandemic. And by different, I don't mean wearing masks or socially distancing or really worrying about the state of the world. Just by a show of hands, did anybody try something different, do something different? Was it baking sourdough bread? Did you go somewhere? Anyone do something slightly different during the pandemic, or was it just me? All right, I see some hands up. All right, we can talk about what those were at some point in time. Well, for me, I found purpose during the pandemic by writing this book, which each of you have today. So you may ask, why write a book during a pandemic? And why write one about saving for college? And I'm going to share with you some of that backstory so that you can better understand. A bit about my why. So in 2020, in the spring of 2020, just as the pandemic was happening to occur, news was that student loan debt was at $1.6 trillion, over 43 million Americans feeling crushed by this debt. There was a study at the time which showed 2/3 of Americans were unfamiliar with 529 college savings plans, and in my view, these are one of the most effective ways to save for higher education. Those who knew about these plans were admittedly unfamiliar with really how they worked. I've got a ton of professional expertise, over 23 years working with these plans. I was an attorney in 1998, and the firm I worked for wanted someone to learn about 529 plans. The firm was Travelers Group, you know that name, which became Citigroup, because they wanted to get in the business of helping families save for higher education as an investment manager. They needed someone to learn about it, and that person was me. I have a close personal connection to the topic, which I'm going to talk to you about. And during the pandemic, I was really quite desperate to focus on something that I could control. The state of the world just seemed so concerning to me. And I found unexpected time on my hands. I was, for the first time in my life, working at home, which some of you may have been as well, depending on the situations at your schools and with your employer. And I started to think, if not now, when? When would I step further into my desire to help families with saving for college? I've done a ton through the years. As they said in my introduction, I know I've helped hundreds of thousands of families by educating them about 529 plans, avoid millions of dollars in student loan debt, but with 2 out of 3 Americans saying they knew nothing about 529 plans, I thought, what else can I do with this time on my hands? So let me tell you about my personal connection. There I am at my high school graduation. While I may look confident, I wasn't confident at all. I was heading off to college, but as a student who was a first-generation college goer from a very low-income family, I had a lot of concern about whether I could make a go of this. Was it the right decision to step away from a rather fragile family situation at the time and go pursue something that could potentially be helpful but would really distract me from the everyday of helping my family? going to college at my mom's insistence and working multiple jobs and sending money home. So while the freshman roommate was getting a check in the mail from her parents, just the opposite. I was mailing money home to help my family continue to survive while I was away trying to better myself. And I never really stepped away. Emotionally, I was there. I did, however, have to borrow over $50,000 in student loans between my undergraduate degree and my graduate degree. I went to law school at night while working full-time, but it was still expensive. So I had a little bit of undergraduate debt and a good amount of graduate school debt. And that took me nearly 20 years to repay. So I talk to you today from the perspective of a subject matter expert on preparing for college costs, from the perspective of somebody who was deep in debt, from the perspective of a low-income student. I know you serve some of those who really was quite uncertain about being able to manage college, and from the perspective of a mom, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about that. I will tell you my belief in higher education is strong. I believe firmly that my ability to lift my family and myself out of the situation we were in is 100% attributable to the higher education that I pursued and achieved. Many doors were opened for me by getting those multiple degrees, and I was able to be in a position to empower myself to help my family. And in fact, we had lost our home when I was a child, but years later, after getting the student loan debt repaid, and after helping my family in many ways along the way, I was able to buy a home for my mom and for my brother who's developmentally disabled. So to get them out of federal housing and into a home purchased by me. And I say 100% that was due to my mom encouraging me to go to college and my going and achieving what I did and working really hard. So when I talk to first-generation students today, and low-income students and students from situations that were like mine, or in many ways probably more complicated, I tell them about the value of pursuing higher education. I remind them, remember I told you I was lacking in confidence, I remind them that they very much have more in their toolkit than they realize. And in fact, they're very well prepared in many ways to succeed in higher education and in life because of the challenges they had. I was so resourceful and so resilient, and I could outwork anybody because I had to. I could multitask. I could work through complicated situations. And students that are better off financially, oftentimes they may have those informal personal connections, they may have the better recommendations for college, or the parents or grandparents or a donor, but they may not have what a student like me had, and students like you now have, which is really the ability and the drive to succeed. So I try to encourage those students and let them know that they may feel like they're lacking in some ways, and they are financially and perhaps otherwise, but they've got it together. And I wish I knew then what I knew now, which is that those skills, that background, as difficult as it may have been, really helped serve me. And look, now I'm serving others as a result of that. So I had $50,000 in student loan debt myself. My husband had about $50,000 as well. At the time I was being asked to develop expertise in 529 of the Internal Revenue Code, I found I was expecting our son. We were a few years into a marriage. And we said, we are determined for this child to have a less financially stressful academic experience than the two of us had. And it was at that moment I said, and my husband said, we're going to start saving a little at a time. And I mean a little at a time. We started with $25 a paycheck at work directly into the 529 plan. We had no idea how we'd afford to get out of our one-bedroom apartment. As our family grew, we had no idea how we were going to manage all this, but we said we want better for him. We started with our why, which I tell families to start with. What's your vision? Our vision is what we wanted and didn't want for this child of ours. And I'll give you an update on where that child is today, because I'm going to see him graduate from graduate school this weekend. Yay! So good. So I'm going to tell you a little bit today about the approach to my book. I want to tell tell you about some of the key themes. I'm going to bust some of the myths that some of you may actually believe about 529 plans. I'm going to tell you the unexpected rewards that I've experienced, the interest generated, and the feedback I've received. And then, of course, I'm going to be glad to answer the questions you have. So let me tell you about the approach to this book. First of all, my son helped design that cover. He did the initial design of it, and then we got a really skilled graphic artist to finalize it and make it really formal. But we think of savings as a journey. Again, I said, what's your why? Where are you headed? How do you get there? What do you do when you go on a trip? You just don't wing it generally. You're thinking about where you're going and how you're going to get there. And that's why I made it into a journey. We use the school bus yellow, or the same yellow as a #2 pencil, to bring in the idea of academics. And you can see I tied the mortarboard to the road just to make it feel education related. I made it very easy to understand. Every chapter in my book has key takeaways that are really simple. So there's greater depth within the chapter, but at the end you'll see key takeaways. I imagine a busy working parent looking at the book, setting it down, chasing after their toddler, I don't know, having a conversation with their teen, whatever the case may be, back and forth to the book. So I made it really easy. I made it relatable. There's nothing ivory tower about this. This is a parent's guide to saving for college, and I explained exactly what my journey was like and gave you a peek into it, not only my journey, but the journey of other families I know, just to make it a little bit more relatable. My tone is encouraging. I know a lot of people frighten families about just how expensive it is to go pursue higher education. It is expensive, we know that. But I try to be encouraging to say whatever you can save is that much less you will need to borrow and repay with interest. So don't feel overwhelmed. Just get started and do something. And I offer really tangible tips that I think people can visualize. I do it in a visual way and remember. So here are some of the easy to follow visuals. And you've got the book, so if you can't see it from here, you'll have it in your hand. But I try to explain right here the open road of options. What can 529s be used for? So many things: K-12 tuition, vocational schools, apprenticeship covered, registered apprenticeships, 2-year, 4-year, online learning, graduate and professional school, trade and technical. I love the presentations today, and I want to commend my fellow presenters. Such great information. Make sure people know there's many ways these can go. I talk about investing found money. Here's a potty champion. We have a little trophy like that for my son when he achieved that status. And I talk to parents and say, how much are you spending a month on diaper and diapering supplies? Often it's $60 or more. So if the child's potty trained at 2, hopefully, maybe 3 at the latest, you've got another 15 years that you can take that $60 a month that you were just spending on something else and put it in a college savings account. Look what that adds up to. That's over $16,000, even if it's conservatively invested in a 529 plan. So when people say they have no money, they can't possibly do this, I think there are ways for many families to find opportunities to even redirect money they were already spending. My themes are that saving is a journey, and to start with your why, and to make a plan. You don't go on a trip without making a plan generally. That your mindset matters. How you go into this really makes a difference. So thinking about it as a road to financial independence versus this constant feeling of deprivation. You can't do this and you can't do that because you're saving for college. Think of it as a real positive. Know the facts, bust those myths. Remind families that they're in the driver's seat. Whoever opened that account is really in the driver's seat with respect to the 529 plan, and we'll talk about the fact it doesn't need to be the parent. It could be a grandparent or another loved one. But you don't need to travel alone, and I'm going to talk about who else can help you. And then the unexpected rewards of planning ahead. You can guess what some of those are, but there are some other ones that you might not think of. And then I remind my readers to keep their hands on the wheel and make sensible decisions when they get close to that destination, because what happens far too often, they try Charles talked about it, maybe some of the other presenters, is parents throw caution to the wind and they say, we'll figure it out. Not the time to be guessing. Again, you've worked hard, you've saved something. Before spending it down, let's think about how you're spending it down and whether the institution is a good financial fit based on the net cost and the aid that's been offered. In terms of mindset, I've said it before, I'll say it again, start with your why. People tend to stick with goals if they know why they're doing it in the first place. So if you know what you're trying to achieve and you know what it is, ours was that determination for this kid to not have debt like we had, it made a difference. I tell people to visualize how it will look and feel. Well, that destination of yours, shut your eyes, imagine what's it going to look and feel like when you get there. That also helps you to stick with your determination. Identify and embrace the steps. Charles' team and others can help figure out, back you into what you need to do to get there. And you don't need to do it all. Families don't need to save 100%, most don't. But if you want to save a fraction of it, let's figure out, based on what you think your child might pursue, and that can certainly change over the years, what would you need? I encourage people to lower expenditures and reframe this all as a path to financial freedom. There are typically expenditures in almost every household that can be lowered. Automate contributions. That saving from my paycheck was the best thing I did. I didn't see the money. Didn't know how I was going to save it, but it didn't pass my hands, so I didn't have a decision to make about which way I would spend the money. It was in the 529 plan. And then to celebrate the progress along the way. When those statements come in from time to time, I tell families, don't set it and forget it. Look at the progress you're making. Remember you're making progress. I have visuals in my book that tell people, or readers, by just putting $1 a day aside, or just spending $1 less, what can you accumulate? And if you do that from the time your child's born, you'll have almost $11,000. That's just $1 a day. $250 gets you up to $26,000, $2.50 a day, not spent on something else. I know some families can't do this, but I bet many can. I do it up to $5 and $10 a day. I'll get you over $104,000. You don't think of these small amounts adding up, but they do. So that's what I tried to bring to life in this book. No need to travel alone. I encourage my readers to share their goal with like-minded others who they trust. Maybe you have another friend who's a parent. Maybe it's members of your family. Let them know you're on this journey. I think there's accountability and encouragement if you can find others that feel the same way as you about wanting to prioritize this goal. Engage a trusted advisor. You don't need a trusted advisor to invest in a 529 plan, but they sure can help. If you have access to one, it might be a reason you'll consult one, not necessary. But if you have an advisor who's guiding you on other aspects of your financial situation, why not ask them for assistance with respect to saving for higher education? It's an important component. It may be one of the, I don't know, top 3, 2 or 3 investments you'll ever make, depending on the size of the amount you need to save or want to save. Invite friends and family to join you. This is critical. How many people in your life love a child that you also love, whether it's your own child or it's a niece or nephew? Think about that. Is it 10 people? Is it 15? Is it 5? There are 18 birthdays between birth and higher education. There's at least 18 holidays. I think every family celebrates at least one holiday a year. Throw in a religious celebration, a first Holy Communion, a bat or bar mitzvah, a preschool graduation. You've got 40 occasions, 18 birthdays, 18 holidays, a few other milestones, 40 occasions when someone is going to want to give your child something. Do you want it to be a stuffed animal? Is it a small outfit that the child will outgrow? Is it another toy or game that's going to clutter your home? Or could you politely ask people, or certainly offer the suggestion if they ask you what does the child need or want for Christmas or Hanukkah this year, to say, you know what, I don't really need anything else, or buy them a little something at the dollar store, let's get some money in the 529 account, even if they put $10, $15, $25 in. Get your employer involved. Part of my day job at Gift of College is to encourage employers to offer 529 plans as a financial wellness benefit and to match contributions into them as they do for retirement. So with the Great Resignation underway, employers are scrambling to attract and retain top talent. It's worth asking, would they be willing to contribute in any way to your college savings journey? And my firm offers gift cards. So if you have friends and family that you would like to contribute to your account, or if you're going to a baby shower or a birthday party and you don't want to ask, do you have a 529, you can give a gift card. These are offered online at giftofcollege.com. They're in CVS stores. They're rolling out in CVS stores around the country. You can give this gift card. Can't be used for anything other than redemption into a 529 plan. They can also be used to pay down student loan debt, but the person cannot get the money and use it for something else. So giving the gift of education yourself to others and requesting that others give it to you, I think is a good idea. And many of the 529 plans have a convenient way to invite people to. You can send a barcode out. You don't need to use these gift cards, but I wanted to make you aware that they exist. And many employers, we're seeing them sell out in some of the retail locations. Turns out employers are buying them. They're giving them to employees who have a baby or who adopt a baby. They're giving them as rewards and recognition, knowing that employees are struggling with paying for higher education. So look out for these gift cards if you're so inclined. As I said, there's many occasions, we just went over this, and I have a chart in my book that shows you if just 5 gift givers gave $25 for each of those occasions, you've got over $7,000. And if, say, 10 gift givers gave $100 per occasion, you'll have almost $58,000. So I bet you have people in your life, or your students' families have people in their lives who would give a gift of $25. My God, most everything costs at least $25 at this time. So I mapped this out in the book just to give people food for thought, like, oh my God, as you look around your home and you've got the stuff you don't need or the toys you're tripping over, how about suggesting, if you're so inclined, that people consider contributing to the college account? I think it's a gift that comes without buyer's remorse, and investing in a child's future, I think, is extremely satisfying, right? It's a gift that will grow versus depreciate in value. In my book, I bust one of the most common myths. These aren't, they're called college savings plans, they're not just for traditional college. The account owner does not need to be related to the beneficiary. You don't have to invest in your home state's college savings plan, although it's a good idea to check it out. You can invest in multiple states' 529 plans if you want to diversify. You don't have to use the funds at an in-state school. You don't lose it if you don't use it. These accounts can remain open indefinitely. You can switch the beneficiary to a member of the family of that original beneficiary. You can hang on to it for your children's children someday, your grandchildren. You can use it yourself if you're the account owner and the child doesn't need it. And federal financial aid treatment is not unfavorable. We talked about this a bit ago. These accounts are parental assets and only up to 5.64% of the account value is considered. So if you've saved $10,000, that's $564 only. You would surely rather save and have that small amount counted in the financial aid equation than to not have saved at all, because financial aid is largely comprised of student loans. So this myth that you're going to hold out for financial aid and not save isn't really that useful. Yes, there is institutional aid that may count these, or state aid may count them, but still most professionals say better to save. And no, higher education will not generally be free. We keep hearing this over and over again. In some states, yes. If you earn under a certain amount, you can get tuition free. At certain institutions, there are also often conditions to that. But I believe there will always be higher education costs that you'll want to cover. So I would not hold out the hope that something's going to be free. Let me get some water, just quickly here. Any questions at the moment? Making sense? I hope. Go ahead.
Where did that rumor about some plans or some states wouldn't honor 529? Because I've heard that a few times, and you were saying myth busting, but I know I've heard that from multiple times. Can you say what?
What do you mean by, that's a good question. What do you mean by wouldn't
that you
honor?
Would only use them in certain state institutions or certain private institutions within the state? I'm not a scholar of this, but I've heard that rumor, and so I'd like to make sure you're busting this myth.
Okay, so under Section 529 of the Internal Revenue Code, there are two types of plans. We are talking today about 529 college savings plans. There is something that is less commonly known, which I think may be the source of your information, called 529 prepaid tuition plans. And these plans, I think they're in 8 or 9 states. Florida is one of the biggest ones that has it. They allow parents to pay for tomorrow's tuition at today's prices. They allow them to really get a contract and lock into tomorrow's tuition at today's prices. In exchange, they want you to go to a school in that state. I talk about 529 prepaid plans in the book. I make it clear that that's not what the book's about, but that those plans do exist. And for some families, if you happen to live in a state that has it, again, I think only 8 or 9 do, and you know for sure your child's gonna go to school in that state, you might want to lock in tomorrow's tuition at today's prices.
That's the one.
That's the source, okay. But that's just for tuition. So I tell families, even if they're going to go in a prepaid tuition plan, they're still going to need to save for room and board tuition. I mean, room and board, supplies and books, computers, etc. But great question. These accounts increase college-going expectations. You may or may not know that there's a study that says low and moderate income children who have even under $499 set aside for them in a college account. That's low-income children with under $500 in an account for them. When those children become aware of that as a child and really sort of embrace the fact that somebody believes in them and has set up a college account, those children are 3 times more likely to attend college and 4 times more likely to complete higher education. So these accounts are not just for the wealthy, and they have benefits that go well beyond the peace of mind and being able to pay. In families like the one I grew up in, knowing that somebody was saving for you can really change the trajectory of your future. So I encourage families, even low-income families, to at least get the account open. Put something in if they can, and then invite others to contribute, perhaps invite their employer. I launched a program in New York City called New York City Kids Rise in 2017, whereby every public school kindergartner now is getting seed money for college. A donor and his wife, John and Mindy Gray, donated money to New York City. I helped them design the program, and now every child in New York City gets $100 immediately upon entering kindergarten, unless the parents decline the account, and then they get additional funds if the parents take certain actions, like start contributing themselves, come in for a financial literacy lesson, etc. I'm very proud of that because I know students of all income levels can really be impacted by these accounts. I think having money set aside for something like higher education prepares you for life's bumps in the road. Things happen from the time a child is young until they reach higher education. People lose their jobs. Parents sometimes die. Parents sometimes divorce if they're even together in the first place. I know in my case, I began caring for my elderly mom and took responsibility for my brother. After she passed away, there were additional expenses. One can lose their job. Lots of things can happen. But having money earmarked for something that's so important really can make those bumps in the road a little bit easier. I think 529 accounts allow children to see some healthy financial modeling in their family. My son wrote the foreword to our book, and we'll look at what he had to say on one of the future slides. But watching your parents set aside something a little at a time for a particular goal, I think teaches children a tremendous amount. Children learn more by what they see than what they hear. They learn a lot from what they hear too, but I think it's a great, I don't think parents realize this can help teach your child something that's going to serve them well. And it certainly gives you choice when the time comes to pursue higher education. This is something that my son wrote in the foreword. He said, as a result of having a 529 account to rely on, I was able to select a university and a major that were a good fit for me. I was able to focus on my studies, which was something I and his father really couldn't do while we were working multiple jobs, without distraction. I was able to pursue volunteer opportunities, so he wasn't constantly driven. He did work through college, but he wasn't driven to have to make a certain amount. And he even was able to pursue an unpaid internship one summer, because that's hard for students that are trying to pay for college as well. And he said the account gave him options that he would not have had otherwise, and he knows the account provided his parents with peace of mind, which it did. So that's from a child's perspective, what did they experience by having this account? My son is so grateful, and he knows exactly what went into our achieving it. His education didn't drop from the sky. We worked really hard. We drive a 22-year-old car to this day. We never bought another car. Our car still runs. It got him literally to college, that car, and figuratively, because we didn't waste money on things we didn't need. We cut the cable bill. We weren't watching all those channels. We put that extra money into his college account, and he knows that, and I think that's great. I think it's great that a child can learn something. So here's what I say about hands on the wheel and sensible decisions. I think most of you will agree with me. I think it's a great idea to discuss available resources well in advance. Don't start discussing them when the admissions letters come in, or the financial aid letters. That feels a little bit late, and now everybody's shocked that there's not money or somebody can't pursue their dream. Keep an open mind about school options. We talked a little bit earlier about some schools, maybe you're above their curve, they're going to be more interested in offering you some merit money. Don't get stuck on one dream school, because an unaffordable dream school can lead to a nightmare of student loan repayment. Review net costs and those offers carefully. I'm sure Charles's team can help tremendously in that regard, really knowing what to ask about, really comparing and contrasting. Make certain that those student loan implications are fully understood. Who's going to be paying those loans back? Because a child's brain is not fully formed at 18. They're not providing collateral. They don't have a job yet. You know, it may seem sort of abstract that this money's going to have to be repaid. I say make certain everybody understands of what is that amount as you're looking at what type of career they'll be potentially pursuing. That can change during college, and what type of income may be there. And then I say consider alternative approaches to avoid unmanageable debt and regret. And those alternative approaches can be many. As guidance counselors, I'm sure you know of many. Maybe you start somewhere else and you eventually go to the dream school, or you know, maybe you're taking a gap year and working, deferring that admissions. There's lots of things that can be done. So in terms of the interest that this book of mine, this pandemic project has generated, a lot of parent and family interest. Media interest, I'll talk to you about that, which has been a great opportunity for me to get the word out. Advisor interest, Charles, people like you and others are contacting me. Some of them are buying my books and giving them to families, their clients, as gifts, or when somebody has a new baby, etc. Employers are interested. I just found out that the American Bankers Association is giving my book in a $1,000 contribution to a college account to every employee who expands the size of their family through birth or adoption. So my book's being used. I think that's tremendous. And organizations of all type are interested. People are having me to come in and speak. And speaking of speaking engagements, I just saw in the news again that a college commencement speaker, a wealthy individual, offered to repay everyone's student loan debt. Did anybody else see these stories? They come up from time to time. Yeah, just the thing we need. It's a great thing when it happens. I don't want it to allow people to think, to hold out hope on that. That's a rare occurrence. But I say there's a better form of commencement speaker that can help avoid that debt as well. And it doesn't need to be a wealthy person, it doesn't need to be a famous person, it ought to be a person like me, doesn't have to be me, but somebody who's saved for their own college to go into a much earlier graduation, say a preschool or kindergarten graduation, spend 10 minutes saying, this is what I did, this is how I did it, $25 at a time, whatever it was, here's some information in the back of the room. Get somebody in at preschool or kindergarten graduation to explain what families themselves can do to prepare to avoid debt versus holding out hope that you'll get a wealthy donor. Does that make sense? In terms of media interest, Forbes, Parents, U.S. News and World Report, Money Magazine has covered my book, has interviewed me, has featured me. Stations across the country, Fox Business, CNBC. On the political spectrum, we've got everybody's interested, right? This isn't a political problem. We've got people in need everywhere. ABC 7 New York, I think some of you probably get that station up here, maybe. TV interviews, CNBC, that Sharon Epperson, she's their lead personal finance reporter, came to Brooklyn, where I live, and interviewed me about my personal journey and my son graduating debt-free. And I told her it was the proudest moment of my life, maybe second or tied with my buying my mom that house. Here's some more interviews, And I'll tell you something about those interviews. I wanted to be a broadcast journalist when I started college. I was editor-in-chief of my school newspaper as a high school student. You saw I delivered the commencement speech. So writing and speaking were of interest. I got to college and I lacked confidence. As a low-income student, it took me till I was 18 to be able to afford braces for my teeth. So I felt awkward in front of the camera. I didn't have clothes to wear that many of the other students had. I felt like I didn't look good enough for broadcast journalism, so I dropped that degree and pursued something else. I studied philosophy and political science. I ended up editing my school's journal, and I eventually went to law school. But I really wanted to report the news, and how great is it now that I'm on the news? I didn't have the confidence then, but I think I'm pretty good. I explain this pretty clearly and I'm authentic. So me being me, back in college, I felt so uncomfortable about who I was. I feel more comfortable today, and sharing my authentic story, I think, helps others. Feedback, check out my Amazon reviews, and please, if you're so inclined, let others know what you think. It really helps. People say it's everything you need to know about 529 plans. It demystifies college savings. Clear and reassuring, exactly what I want it to be. If you're a parent, you need this book, I would say yes. And A+ for clear and concise. Makes me feel real good. And let me tell you how it feels. Here I am at Benjamin's undergraduate graduation at Clark University last May. I'm returning there Sunday for his graduate school graduation. But can you see the joy on my face, the relief, the fact that we saved a little at a time? We picked a school that was a good financial fit. If you don't know Clark University in Worcester, I can't say enough about the school. It is tremendous. I happen to be on their Parents Advisory Council. I love the school. It was a perfect fit for my son who wanted an urban setting with a traditional campus. Could have gone to Northeastern at $80,000, $78,000 that year. Boston University was an option, American. Clark really wanted him, and he liked that school. It's a smaller school, it was a good fit. His merit aid, coupled with what we did with the 529, gets us out debt-free, and they offered him a full tuition scholarship for his master's degree, which will end on Sunday. So, this is how it feels, this is how proud I am. And I want to encourage you. I said at the start of this, I bet many of you don't make yourself a priority. And having written this book, I feel like I fulfilled a dream of mine to really help with writing and speaking and help others with a project. I'll ask you, what's a dream deferred, and you don't have to say it now, but think about this, that you might resurface and pursue. So I want to leave you with that thought. All of us have dreams. I had thought for years about potentially